Are you about to book a small ship ocean cruise with Tauck, or maybe you already have, and you're trying to figure out if you should use their travel protection or not to insure your cruise? If so, let's go ahead and talk about that today. Hi there, travel lovers. It's your trusted cruise and Tauck tour and Africa safari expert Shawn Power here. And today I want to talk to you about specifically Tauck's small ship cruises and like I said, whether it makes sense to use insurance or not. Now, a lot of people do know Tauck as a land tour company. You know, they've been around for 100 years now, and that's how they started. And especially a lot of my clients also know them as a river cruise company. That's how I introduce a lot of my clients to Tauck for the first time. About 40% of my personal business is with Tauck between their land tours and ocean cruises and river cruises. So I have a lot of clients who travel with them. I've been, done 12 trips with them myself. I have a couple more coming up over the next year. Great company, and I will put in the description underneath a bit more about Tauck and why they're so highly rated and everything. But again, let's get into the insurance part today, because what happens a lot of times when I book my clients on a small ship cruise, and a lot of my clients, by the way, for the first time don't even realize that Tauck does small ship cruises because they don't own their own cruise ships. They'll charter space on companies like Ponant or Silver Sea or Windstar. And then they'll go to places like Galapagos or Antarctica, a bunch of places in Europe, from Iceland to Venice and the Dalmatian coast. They have some trips in Japan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that through this. But the point is, we're going to talk about specifically Tauck small ship cruises. And what happens is, for the first time when I introduce my people that, my clients to Tauck, and they book a cruise, they need to decide if they want to use their insurance or not. Also, I have a lot of people who they might have booked direct with Tauck, and they find me online because they're doing some research, and they find my videos on my website, and they also want some advice. And a lot of those people will then move their bookings to me from Tauck because I can get them a free hotel night pre-trip if they're a first-time traveler. Or if not, I can get them some other perk if they're been with Tauck before. But the point is, they'll come to me as well and ask me about insurance. So I find this is a common topic, and I want to tackle it today because it's not the simplest topic. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of things we need to talk about. So let's get into it and see if I can help you, get some value from this. Now, first of all, I want to say, I'm not a licensed travel insurance seller. I don't work for Aon, which is the company that Tauck uses for insurance. I don't work for Allianz, which is the company I'm also going to talk about here a lot today, because I do sell a lot of Allianz policies with other companies. But, I have been doing this for 20 years now. I've booked, around $100 million of travel for my clients. And because of that, I've literally seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have to cancel their trips. And 80% of my clients do use travel insurance. They don't want to lose, tens of thousands of dollars. So they insure themselves against cancellation, against medical emergencies and those kind of things. So again, very common for people to add insurance. And but always the question is, who should I use? Now, so like I said, I'm not an insurance licensed seller. I don't work for these companies. So if you are going to look at these policies and potentially purchase one, do make sure you read the policies, understand what you're buying, or call Aon or call Allianz if you have more questions. But again, I'll do my best to interpret it and hopefully help you figure this out. So, first of all, when I say Tauck's travel protection or Allianz's insurance, we're talking, pretty much similar thing. These are just, the insurances that cover you if things go wrong. So we're talking trip cancellation if you get, you can't go on the trip. We're talking medical emergencies while you're traveling. Maybe you have a trip interruption while you're away. Your house burns down. You got to fly home, or heaven forbid, someone passes away. We're talking flight delay, baggage loss, damage delay, all those kinds of things. So whether you go with Tauck or whether you go with Allianz, you're going to be covered for pretty much all the same things. But that's kind of where the similarities end. And, this is what I want to talk about here is, I'm going to talk about specifically 3 reasons why, just so you know right away, of all my Tauck clients, and again, I have a lot of them, 95% of them, I was looking at the numbers, 95% of them insure through Tauck rather than Allianz. Now, don't get me wrong, when I book people on Regent or Silver Sea or Explorer or Oceania or some of those other companies, I'm going to usually insure them with Allianz, and that's another video for another time. But with Tauck, almost everyone uses Tauck's insurance, and I'll explain why. So first off, and I've got some notes here because I want to give you some real life examples, I'm going to talk about price. This is the simplest reason to see why Tauck is probably going to be the best bet for you. But then there's also another couple of reasons why I'm going to talk about more later as well. But again, let's talk about price. So what I'm doing here is I'm just looking at, I like to use numbers and stats and real life stuff. So I'm looking at all the destinations that Tauck goes to. And like I said, they got multiple destinations in Europe, and they go to Alaska on their small ship cruises, Japan, South Korea, Great Lakes, Galapagos, Canada, New England. But I narrowed down the 4 top places that my clients go to, which are Antarctica is probably number 1, Galapagos is probably number 2, and then Iceland and the Venice and Dalmatian coast are probably number 3 tied. So I have a lot of people who do those trips every year. And so I looked at the price of all those trips, and I averaged it out. And sure enough, came to right around $13,000 a person. Actually, it was closer to like 13.8 or something, but let's call it 13 to make an even number. So here's what I mean by that. My average client is spending $13,000 per person on these trips. Now, the reason that number is important is because if you go to Allianz or Travel Guard or any other insurance company, they're going to say, how much is your trip? So you need to know this number. So I looked at, going to Allianz and how much their insurance would be, and I compared it to Tauck's. Now, by the way, let me explain Tauck's insurance really quickly because their pricing is simple. It's a flat rate. Depending on your trip you're doing, it's just one rate, and it doesn't change. If you book the basic room or you book the most expensive room on board, which is double the price, your insurance is the same price. If you're, 50 or 80 or 90, it's the same price. With Allianz and all these other companies, as your trip price goes up, so does your insurance. As your age goes up, I hate to say it, but they consider you a higher risk, so your insurance price goes up. But with Tauck, it's flat. Now, I think I have this right because, again, I book all these Tauck trips. The only trip that I think is different is Antarctica. So pretty much every small ship ocean cruise you're going to book with Tauck, insurance is $799 a person, so $799. Flat rate, never changes, doesn't matter your age or anything. With Antarctica, it's $989 a person. And that kind of makes sense because you're literally in the middle of nowhere. I'll probably put my Antarctica trip I did with Tauck underneath. I'll put a link underneath this video because it was a fabulous trip. But like I say in there, you're in the middle of nowhere. So can you imagine if you get sick or injured, the expenses it's going to be, on board, they, probably have more doctors than normal and stuff. I don't know the exact setup, but the point is it's way more expensive. So they've got to charge a little bit more. So besides Antarctica, which is $989 per person, every other Tauck small ship cruise, at least that I can think of, and I looked at this, it seems that they're all $799 a person. So it's a flat rate. But with the Allianz, it's going to change. Now, just so you know, Tauck's, the average age for a Tauck client is 67. Now, I know that because I'm on the advisory board with Tauck. Now, I don't work for Tauck. They don't give me any special, extra payment to be on their advisory board or to do these videos. I own my own business. I book, who I want for my clients, but it's just my clients love Tauck. They go with them again and again, just like I do. So they're a great company because I do so much business. They want my advice as well as some of my other colleagues in the industry. So like I said, I'm on their advisory board, and because of that, I know the average age is 67. So here's why I want to start with that number. If you go to Allianz and you put in that you're 67 years old and your trip is $13,000, insurance is going to be $1,465, so $1,465. Now, a lot of my clients are even older than that. So if you're 71 to 75, insurance is going to be $1,830, so $1,830. If you're 76 to 80, it's going to be $2,282, $2,282. And if you're 81 or older, it's going to be $2,867. $2,867. That's a lot of money to insure yourself. The point is, if you go back to Tauck, it's either going to be $799 on pretty much all their small ship cruises, or like I said, Antarctica is $989. But again, that's a lot cheaper than $1,465 or higher. And even if you're younger, 61 to 65, it's going to be $1,262. 56 to 60, $1,143. So the point is, you'd have to be pretty young for your insurance to be cheaper with Allianz than it would be with Tauck. So right away, it's almost always going to be less with Tauck. So that's going to be one of the reasons why, most of my clients do use Tauck's option, because it's going to save them hundreds of dollars, and in some cases, literally thousands. So that's number one, it's going to be the price. Now, number two is, I'll call this flexibility. Their policy is a little bit more flexible, and I'll explain what I mean by that. If you book a Tauck small ship cruise, your deposit is going to be $1,500. Again, Antarctica is a little different. Antarctica is $1,700. But again, whether it's $1,500 or $1,700, that deposit is 100% non-refundable. So if you book it and you don't have insurance and you cancel before final payment, unfortunately that money's gone. It's just, you're not going to get it back. Now, if you buy Allianz's insurance and you cancel before final payment, you have to cancel for what we call a covered reason, sickness, injury, death in the family, that kind of thing. Now, one thing you need to understand is most people book Tauck trips like a minimum of a year out. Usually it's more like a year and a half or longer, because everything they do, whether it's the river cruises or land tours or small ship ocean cruises, which is what we're talking about today, they have small groups. These are small ships, like these small ship cruises, like Galapagos, they have like 40, no, it might only be 20 people on board. Their biggest, ships that they charter are like around 200 people. So the point is, people book early because there's not much space. And Tauck also only does so many dates. They're not like year round doing these, like every week, like a Caribbean cruise, like a big ship would. So very limited, and people book early. So point being, let's say you book a trip a year and a half out and plans just change. Well, Allianz is not going to cover plans just change. Again, unless you get sick or injured or pass away, or, like I said, something happens, your house burns down, you can't leave. Like, you've got to have a cover reason. If not, you're going to lose the $1,500 or the $1,700 that, for the deposit you paid. The good part about Tauck's insurance is if you put down that $799 or $989 for Antarctica, no matter the reason you cancel before final payment, they don't even ask why you cancel. They're going to give you the deposit back. So again, you'll get that $1,500 or $1,700 back just by having their insurance. So that's what I mean by more flexible. It just, especially when you're booking so far out, but if you know you're going to use their insurance, don't delay buying the insurance, because some people say, oh, I'll buy it at final payment time. If you do, you won't be covered for pre-existing conditions, which are the number one reason why insurance claims get denied, at least in my experience. So you want to buy it right away for multiple reasons. And when I say right away, all my clients pretty much do it the day we do deposit, but as long as you do it within 10 days, you'll still get this. So as long as you do it within 10 days of purchase of the cruise, you're going to be covered for pre-existing medical conditions. But again, the other thing is, like I said, if you have their insurance, again, no matter the reason you cancel, you're going to lose less. So I say to people, if you're not sure about the trip, or something might change, you're booking so far out, you're limiting how much you're going to lose. So again, let's say right now it's September 25. I'm already booking people for 27 trips. So let's say you book it and you cancel sometime in 26 for no reason. Things change, the stock market goes down, whatever, you just don't want to go. Well, at least you're only going to lose the $799 or $989 instead of $1,500 or $1,700. So again, you're going to lose less, and that's because they have a more flexible policy. I can't say that with Allianz, because you got to have a cover reason. So that'd be the second reason, is you're going to limit what you lose up front by having Tauck's insurance. Now, the third reason, and this also has to do with penalties, and it gets a little bit complex, and hopefully I explain this properly. But basically, by buying Tauck's insurance, you're cutting your penalties in half if you cancel after final payment. So here's what I mean by that. So we've already covered what happens up until final. If you have Tauck's protection, you get your deposit back. If you don't, you lose your deposit. You're going to limit what you're going to lose by having Tauck's protection. But after final payment, starting at 119 days before your cruise up until 60 days before, if you don't have Tauck's travel protection, you're going to lose 50% of what you paid. So again, let's go back to that $13,000 number. If you and your spouse pay $13,000 each, which is $26,000, and you have to cancel and you don't have Tauck's insurance, they're going to keep $13,000, which is half, between you, and then they'll give you the other $13,000 back. Of course, if you have Allianz insurance or something, and you cancel for a covered reason, you'll be able to put in a claim to get that other $13,000 back. But if you didn't cancel for a covered reason, you're going to lose $13,000. And I'll explain why that, how Tauck can help you here in a minute with that. But let's get to the 59 to 1 day before you're sailing. If you cancel in that time frame, Tauck's going to keep 100% of what you paid them. So they'll keep the whole $26,000. If you didn't cancel for a covered reason, Allianz is not giving you a dime back. You're out $26,000. Now, if you buy Tauck's travel protection, they cut the penalties in half. So what I mean is, if you cancel between 119 days and 60 days, they're only going to keep 25% of what you paid. And if you cancel between 59 and 1 days, they're only going to keep 50%. So that means the most you can lose is 50% of what you paid if you have Tauck's travel protection. So again, $26,000 between a couple. The most Tauck will keep is 13 grand. Now, why does this matter? You're probably asking. So let me give you some experience, some examples that I've seen multiple times, actually. One of them is friends. I've had this so many times. I probably can think of at least 5 occasions where I had a couple, or one of the people where their friend died. Like, I'm talking like best friend, and they're like, I'm not going to Europe or Asia or South America or whatever. I'm staying home. I'm mourning. I'm going to be with my friend's family, and they're not going anywhere. But I hate to say it, but Allianz and Travel Guard and all the other insurance companies out there, they're not going to cover a friend passing away. They're only going to cover family members. So again, if you have Allianz insurance in that situation, you're out 26 grand. If you have Tauck travel insurance, you're out 13,000. Now, I'm not saying 13,000 is not a lot of money to lose, but it's better to lose 13,000 than it is to lose 26,000. So again, cuts those penalties in half. Another example is cousins. If you look at all these insurances, I've never seen anything different. They'll cover, when it comes to family members, mom and dad, your spouse, brothers, sisters, your kids. So we'll call it immediate family. but they're not going to cover cousins. I guess because a lot of people have dozens, and I've even known people who've had over 100 cousins, so maybe it's just too many people to cover. So if you got cousins you're close to, especially if one of them is sick, and you know there's a chance you may not be able to go, get Tauck's insurance, because again, let's say it's 3 weeks before the cruise and heaven forbid something happens to your cousin and you can't leave. Tauck's only going to keep $13,000. Now again, you won't be able to get the other $13,000 back because they don't cover cousins. But if you're with Allianz, you're not even going to get a dime back. You're out 26 grand. So hopefully that makes sense. Another couple of things I've seen, I've had a couple of couples who were in a shaky relationship. I've had couples who've literally split up between final payment and the cruise, and they didn't want to travel together. So maybe you're in a shaky relationship or just something weird's going on. Again, with Tauck's insurance, you're cutting the penalties in half. Maybe like me, you're a business owner, and you know last minute, anytime something can happen with your business and you can't leave because you might lose tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars if you leave. Well, of course, you're not going to go on your trip. But again, you're also not going to be covered for insurance. But the most you can lose with Tauck's insurance is 50%. So I hope that makes sense. Again, let's wrap it up if we can with the 3 reasons. Number 1, price. In my experience, Tauck's price is always going to be less for travel insurance or their travel protection compared to Allianz or the other companies because it's flat. They don't go by age. They don't go by the price of the trip. It's just $7.99 or $9.89 for Antarctica. Number 2, it's more flexible. So what I mean is, with the deposit, you pay the $7.99 or $9.89. You pay the deposit of $1,500 or $1,700. This is all per person. And again, if you cancel before final, they don't care why, you're going to get the deposit back. So you're going to get your $1,500 or $1,700 back. You're only out $7.99 or $9.89. So you're only going to lose, or you're going to, obviously you're going to lose, but you're not going to lose as much. But again, that's not the case with Allianz or the other guys. And then third, if you have Tauck's protection, it cuts your penalties in 2, which means no matter the reason you cancel, at least you're not going to lose all. You're going to lose half at the most. Now, when I'm giving all these percentages that you're going to lose and stuff, of course, you're always going to lose what you pay for travel protection. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm sure that's not going to surprise you. You have a car accident and you got to put in the claim. They're not going to give your money back for the insurance you paid. So yes, you'll lose 50 or 25 or whatever I'm saying here on top of the, $7.99 or $9.89 for insurance. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, a couple of notes I made here, because there's a few more things that Tauck's insurance covers that may not be normal or something you may not think about, which I think are definitely additional bonuses. So number 1 is flights. Now, almost none of my clients book Tauck's airfare when they take a trip, when they take a small ship cruise, because it's usually, just way more money. Personally, like I said, I've done 12 trips with Tauck. Every time I take a trip with Tauck, I do, look at the price of flights with them. And then every single time I get a better deal on my own with the airline directly. And that's the same with my clients. So we all book our flights direct with the airlines. It's just a smarter thing to do. Again, I'll put a link underneath underneath this video why I recommend that. But point being, people say, okay, Shawn, if I buy Tauck's insurance, is it also going to cover my airfare? And the answer is actually yes. In most situations. And this surprises a lot of people because they, a lot of companies say we're only going to cover airfare if you buy our insurance, but not, or if you have us book the airfare, but not if you book it elsewhere. So here's what Tauck's insurance says, and you can see this in the policy. It basically says, as long as your flight starts in the city where Tauck is starting the trip and ends in the city where Tauck is ending the trip, and as long as you don't stay in those cities for any more than 14 extra nights, so we're not talking about the trip itself, but let's say you spend an extra couple of days before and after, as long as it's not more than 14 nights, they're actually going to cover your airfare as long as you cancel for a covered reason. So again, Tauck's not going to cut the penalties in half like I talked about earlier because they didn't book your airfare, but the point is, let's say you have $5,000 of business class airfare. When you go to put in your claim with Aon, which is Tauck's insurance company, you can also claim the airfare as well. And as long as they, go ahead and approve that claim, they'll also give you the money back for the airfare. So again, let me give you some real examples of the trips I mentioned earlier. Antarctica, that starts and ends in Buenos Aires. So as long as you fly in and out of Buenos Aires and don't spend 14 more days, you're fine. Galapagos is another big one. That one, starts in Lima, Peru, ends in Guayaquil, Ecuador. So again, as long as you fly in and fly out of those places, you're fine. If we look at Iceland, in and out of Reykjavik, the Venice one, in and out of Venice. So again, as long as you're flying in and out of those places with your flights, you're fine. Now, there are situations though where, Tauck's insurance may not make as much sense, and I'll try to describe this now and hopefully this makes sense. So multi-trip vacations. I do these all the time. Here's what I mean. This summer, I flew to Europe. I did an Arctic cruise with Silver Sea. I finished that a day later. I got on a Tauck River cruise in France. I finished that a day later. I went on a Danube River cruise with Ama Waterways. So I was in Europe for like 5.5 weeks. So basically, that's what I call a multi-trip. My clients do them all the time. I do them all the time because you save money on airfare. There's a whole reason why they're a great thing to do. And again, I'll put it underneath this video. I'll put the reasons why. Point being, with Tauck, if you book multi-trips, and I have clients do this multiple times. I just literally yesterday I booked 2 couples on 2 trips each for next year. So I booked like 4 trips between them both, and they're like back to back. And then I had another couple a few weeks ago who just returned from Europe who did 3 back-to-back trips. So here's why I'm bringing that up. If you do a trip in, let's say Europe is a very easy example. I'll go back to some of the cruises that I book a lot. Iceland. So let's say you fly over, you do Tauck's Iceland cruise, you're done, you take a flight from Reykjavik to Venice, and then you do Tauck's Venice and Dalmatian cruise. As long as there's no more than 4 days in between, Tauck's going to give you the insurance for free on the second trip. Or I shouldn't always say second trip, it's whatever the least expensive insurance is. Most times it's going to be the same price and it'll be the second trip. But here's what it looks like in real life. So let's say you do the Iceland cruise for $13,000 a person. You do the Venice cruise for $13,000 a person. You pay the $799 insurance on both cruises, but Tauck gives you a $799 discount on the Venice cruise. Because the reason they say that is, hey, like, you're doing 2 trips with us. We don't want to, charge you for insurance twice. They have to charge you twice to be insured, but they give you a $799 discount on the second one. So let's look at that. That means you're paying $13,000 for cruise 1, $13,000 for cruise 2. You've spent $26,000, and your insurance is $799. If you go back to those examples I gave earlier with the 67-year-olds and the 70 and all that, you'll remember that was like 11, 12. I think the 81-year-olds were paying almost 25% for insurance. So on $26,000, you're talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 plus for insurance, but you're only paying Tauck $799. So if you do a multi-trip, my goodness, that's going to save you thousands between you and your partner. If you're going on your own, like I said, even on your own, you're going to save thousands. So that's a really big perk in my mind. If you're going on multi-trips with Tauck, you're going to get that insurance for free on at least one of those cruises. So great perk, and I'll make sure I set that up for you when I get you booked. Now the other thing is the one I kind of alluded to earlier, and this one's a little bit out of the box thinking, because a lot of people say to me, I never thought to do that, and I know a lot of travel agents don't do it. So let's kind of explain another scenario. Let's say you do the Venice and Dalmatian Coast cruise with Tauck, and you don't do any other Tauck trip during your visit to Europe, but you go off and you do something else. I don't know, you fly to Paris for a week, you fly to London for a few days, you go to wherever, Milan, you hang out. Point is, you're not going in and out of Venice, which is Tauck's trip. So all of a sudden, Tauck is not going to cover you for medical emergencies while you're in these other places. Maybe you're gone for another week, 2, 3 weeks. So a lot of my clients think, oh, well, I guess, if I'm going elsewhere and Tauck can't cover me, I'm going to have to do Allianz. Because with Allianz and Travel Guard and all these other guys, they're going to cover you for medical emergencies from the day you leave home till the day you return home. So a lot of my clients think, I guess I'll have to do the more expensive one so I'm covered the whole time. But here's what I do. I'll set up my client's Venice cruise with the $799 insurance, and then I'll set up an Allianz policy for them with 0 cancellation. Because cancellation is what makes an insurance policy expensive. If you're insuring $13,000. But I'll do like a medical only Allianz policy. So like, let me give you an example here. I'm looking at, again, that 67-year-old. And if I go to Allianz and say, we want to insure them for medical emergencies, but no cancellation, their policy is only $101, 101. So my client buys that for $101, and then they buy the Tauck one for $799. They spent $900 to be covered the whole time away, instead of having to pay, let's go back up what we said earlier, $1,465. And again, the point is, the older you get, this is all going to be even more, bigger savings. So again, that's just kind of a little bit of out of the box thinking, rather than just trying to, I could easily say, sorry, Tauck can cover you, and try to sell you insurance. And I hate to say this, I've seen other travel agents do this all the time. This is no surprise as a travel agent. Well, I'll get paid commissions when we book a trip for you. Of course, it doesn't come out of your pocket. If you go to Tauck and book your trip direct, you're paying for my commissions whether you work with me or not. The point is that, that's why a lot of people will work with me, is because, when they work with me, they get an extra perk and it's the same price. So it's never a better deal. But the point is, there's always commissions involved. So it's the same with insurance. And if I was to sell you Tauck insurance and Allianz insurance, with Allianz, I'm going to make double the percentage of commission that I would with Tauck's insurance. So I hate to say it, but I've seen this again and again and again with colleagues in the industry, where they only sell Allianz insurance because they're making like double the percentage in commissions. I don't agree with it. I think it's a terrible idea. but that's all they ever offer. So they're not going to show you this a lot of times. I hope your travel agent does. I truly do. But again, my point is I don't really care. I'm not looking to make a little bit of money on insurance. I'm looking to have you be a return client of mine again and again and tell all your friends about me and stuff. And I've got a lot of clients, so obviously that works. So the point is I'm going to always find the best option for you. And in a lot of situations, I'll set up Tauck for the cruise, for your small ship ocean cruise, and then add Allianz after to cover the rest of the trip. So anyway, I know that was a complex topic today. I hope I clearly explained it. I'm sure there's places where I probably never, so please leave a comment if you need me to clarify anything. Go to ShawnPower.com and send me a message. And like I said, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, you've got to talk to Aon or Allianz, because again, they're the ones who can, really kind of cover everything for you. So beyond that, I hope you got some value from this video today. I hope it helped you decide if it makes sense for you to use Tauck's insurance or not. Again, any questions, let me know. And beyond that, have a great day and we'll talk to you soon. All the best. Bye-bye.